Good morning, everyone. This is Captain Ando. I am the Dark Star and Terra Nova strategist. Today, I want to talk a little bit about the Vidar and Borg megacubes and how they work and why these teams work and why the teams we use that we designate are there to one-shot the Borg megacubes. So there's several things we need to look at in understanding why this works and why, if we don't set it up just right, it will not only fail, but it will fail pretty fantastically. And a lot of you have seen this firsthand. You're running random teams out against the mega cubes, little 5-man squads, and you are falling way short of victory and doing very little damage. And there's several reasons leading into that. The first thing I want to get into is the makeup of the Vidar. I currently have two. One's very high tier. It's max tier 9. My other one I haven't worked on very much. It's about tier 5, but they're good for demonstration purposes. So first of all, the makeup of the Vidar itself. Now, the Vidar itself is an interceptor. It has very good stats, but they're mainly focused on doing two key things. Armor piercing, you'll notice mine is 76k, much higher than any of the shield piercing or accuracy stats. And it has a 12% critical chance rate, 240% critical damage rate currently with my research. And it has decent things there. And it's also centered around dodge. So the thing that's keeping it alive, it's dodge. Shield deflection and armor are near negligible, but dodge is what will keep you alive as long as possible. So those are the two key things about Interceptor that you really need to know, is that armor piercing and dodge are your key stats. Now, the armor piercing, you'll find, doesn't have a dramatic impact here because the way the Mega Cube different components are set up, their mitigation stats are all basically the same. But the key thing that you do need to take away is the dodge, because the dodge is what will make sure you stay alive during the fight. And as we'll talk about in a second here, staying alive is extremely important. And that's based on the weapon construction. Now, the Vidar has 3 weapons. It's got a phaser turrets, which is an energy weapon. It's got photon torpedoes, which is a kinetic weapon. And it has a railgun, which is another kinetic weapon. So being an interceptor, it is focused very heavily on developing strong kinetic weapons, which do a lot of damage through a kinetic means and not energy means. Whereas explorers, you'll notice, are focused more towards energy, and battleships likewise are kind of a mixture of both. So first of all, looking at the phaser turrets being an energy weapon, it has decent damage and max damage. As you can see from before, the armor piercing rating is the highest, being that this is an interceptor. It has a charge time of 1 and a recharge time of 2. So what this means is when this weapon fires, it will fire the first round, and then every odd round after. So it'll fire the first round, the third round, the fifth round, and so on and so forth, as long as the battle goes. Now, the second round here is the photon torpedoes. Their damage is comparatively just a little weaker than the phaser turrets. It was about 12,000 to 14,000 before. Now here it's about 10 to 12,000. Again, armor piercing is the strongest stat. Still has 10% critical chance, 150% critical damage. Now, this one works a little different. It's a charge time too, so it doesn't go the first round, but it goes the second round, and then every round after that. So around 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, so on and so forth. And both weapons each get 1 shot. Now, the crux of this weapons firing pattern is the third weapon. It's the railgun. The railgun has degrees of magnitude stronger min and max damage than the other 2 weapons here. The armor piercing is the same, and the critical chance and critical damage rating are the same. But the key component here is all that extra damage, because when you see these things go off, normal hits against the Borg targets will be somewhere in the scale of 12 to 14 million on a max Vidar. So you want this weapon to be at its maximum strength, because literally the third round, when it does go off, that's going to be a very devastating round that will do probably on the tune to 80% of the damage during that entire fight will just be from these weapons going off. So that means, and this one again has a firing pattern, so it goes off the third round, the sixth round, the ninth round, and so on, because it has a charge time 3 and a recharge time of 3. So it's very important that this weapon goes off from every Vidar present. So what this means to you, and I hate to invoke you must be this tall to ride clause of things, but we really do need you at the maximum tier. And there's a lot of reasons around that. Now, looking between my two Vidars, my small Vidar tier 5, you can see there's a lot of officer slots that I don't get to fill. So I don't get to get my stats quite as high. I apologize for that. But right now I got everything at 315, which is decent. It's still strong in the stats, but I'm not making the most efficient use of this ship. Whereas when I look at my max Vidar here, you can see it's got 350% in all categories. That means I am making the most efficient use of this ship. With the highest attack, I'm getting the most damage out of my weapons. With the highest defense, I'm taking the least damage every time I'm shot. And with the highest health pool, I can last a little longer, take more damage overall. So it's very important to have a tier 9 Vidar. I hate to say it. I mean, I don't like to talk financials or anything else in this game because basically you can go over the old adage, time is money. And people who spent money spent less time working on these things and the reverse. But in the grand scheme of things, the Vidar is over a year old. The event is over a year old. The first time this was released was more than a year ago. If you don't have a tier 9 Vidar at this time, it's not because you're not a Walla warrior who puts hundreds, if not thousands of dollars into this game. It's because you stopped working on it. A lot of you probably have higher tier Stellas right now than you do Vidars. Think about that in context. The Vidar's been out for quite a few months longer than the Stella. And if you are at a lower tier, you honestly just haven't been working on it all that hard because it actually advances in tier fairly easily when you put the work into it. And when you do it, that gives you access to the advantages of the resource refinery for Borg, which is your nanoprobes and your inert nanoprobes, which lets you promote your officers and get a lot of independent credits and rep, or a lot of different faction credits and reps. So that's something you should be working on. A lot of you, quite frankly, I hate to be so candid, but I have to. You just have ignored it for so long that you don't have it at the advanced tier you need to do this. So when I say sorry you can't come in here, I don't want to hurt your feelings, but you haven't been putting in the work, so you don't get to play with the big boys and knocking these guys out, because these are designed specifically to shut you down if you're at a weaker tier. Now, crewing compositions. These are also pretty important. The weakest player in the entire armada is going to run a very specific crew, and that's going to be with your Borg 9 of 10 at your captain spot, and then on the sides you'll have 7 and 8 of 10. The reason you run this lineup specifically is because 9 of 10 offers the Borg protection, which when fighting a Borg ship decreases the chance of the Borg dealing a critical hit to the opponent by 30 well, it starts at 10%, but when you add 7 of 10 who's a science and you add 8 of 10 who's an engineering type to the command officer 9 of 10, that will make your Borg polarization ability up to 30%. So it's very important you use that combination of officers. And each one of these 3 officers also increase your base stats by a certain amount based on the levels that you promoted them to. So that's the crew we run on the smallest ships. That's we call our crit mitigation crew. Now, the remainder of the ships, the ones who are there to do damage, they'll run a more damage and mitigation oriented lineup, which starts with 5 of 10 in the captain slot. And what she'll do is she'll give an extra 600% shield deflection, armor, and dodge of the total health of all officers on the ship. And that's a captain ability, so it's not something that's subject to promotion, but 6 of 10 augments that by providing synergy. And that is enough synergy to basically make your dodge mitigation work at right around 70%, which is pretty near the maximum level. So any third officer you added in there would not really improve your mitigation any, and you can get a little bit more bang for your buck by adding damage in for either other officers. Now, her officer ability doesn't really do much. It adds resources dropped, which is nice, but it's not really important to the effect of this battle. Now, 6 of 10 actually has a very important ability here. When attacking a target, every time you hit it with the weapon attack, you increase the piercing stat, so the accuracy, armor piercing, and shielded piercing, by 10% of the attack of all weapons on the ship. So those weapons going off will do more damage, is what will really amount to. It'll mitigate less every time it hits, and when that railgun goes off, it'll hurt quite a bit because it goes off basically 6th in the grand scheme of things. So 6 of 10 will be able to operate 5 times before the railgun goes off and make that railgun really hurt. And the last one we use here, I recommend Kurla. He gives up to 50% critical hit damage, which be based on the fact that the photon torpedoes and the railguns are kinetic, that will make them hit even harder, because the mega cubes really do focus on how you perform during that third round. If you don't get all your ships to cycle through all the weapons during the third round, you're probably not going to kill that thing. So that's something that's very important to know. Now, a little bit about the mega cube, since we're on the subject. I just want to look at the 3 different types and understand why they are so dangerous if we operate with the tractor beam. So first of all, the photon cannons. The photon cannons, what you can do is, if you want to look more into it, you can scan it and hit the little information button, and you can figure out a little bit more about it. They're all pretty similar in their stats: high attack, defense, and health. And the other thing you'll notice as you scroll down is their defenses are pretty similar. I don't know why it has the shield deflection as something over 40k and the other 2 are 40k, but they're all right like that. But where they are a lot different here is in the penetration stats. So you'll notice that the armor piercing on this particular device, the Mega Photon Cannon, is very high. It's at 438k, where the shield piercing accuracy are much lower. They're 61 and 87k respectively. That means this operates effectively as an interceptor. Interceptors are effective against battleships. This is designed to do more damage against a battleship. And if you're not very comfortable with reading the piercing stats, you can always scroll down to the bottom description where it says in the description what it's effective against. So you can read through it, and says the Mega Cube sports a high-powered photon cannon that is capable of punching through even the most durable of hulls. The weapon fires antimatter photon warheads encased in a charged terminium-like or strange terminium-like casing. The casings explode and impact, sending several tons of red-hot shrapnel into the hull of its target. As the photon blast turns the outer hull into molten slag, its high armor piercing makes it especially powerful against battleships. You know that battleships that go into this fight are going to take more damage. Now you can look through the other different weapon or types of things, that being the photon cannon. You can look at the disruptor. And similarly, you can look at the stats, and as expected, the shield piercing is stronger. So this one operates like a battleship. And you can say, look at the bottom, it says the high shield penetration rating makes it especially powerful against explorers. So that's a tooltip that will indicate there. And likewise, we go to, once I find one, the tractor beam. The tractor beam has the specifically high accuracy rating. So that means it's especially powerful against interceptors. So that means every time it hits, when you look at the battle log and break it down, and I'm just looking at swarm clusters for illustrative purposes. If you're looking at the damage you're doing, the first number, the mitigation number, that's going to be at its lowest because it's pushing, it's their much stronger accuracy pushing against your dodge, and that's making that mitigation number a lot lower. So that will mean that the amount of damage that's left that goes into the shields and the hull will be higher. The shields will take 20% of that. The hull will take, or I'm sorry, the other way around. The shields will take 80% of that. The hull will take 20% of that. As long as the shields are there. Once the shields go down, the hull will take 100%. And the hull is the only thing that determines whether you live or die. The shields regenerate, so on and so forth. So that's what you're working against here. You really do need to make your Vidar last all three of those first rounds, because if you don't get to that railgun firing off, you didn't do much damage to this thing, and you were basically a non-asset the entire battle. And these battles, when they typically go about 3-4 rounds, that's because all the kinetics go off and they hit hard enough to do the real damage. So we really do need a 6-person team, and we really do need them to be optimally operating Vidars that have the best crew, 350%, and the most upgraded weapons to make sure that the impacts do the least amount of damage and the ship survives, and that the railguns do the most amount of damage so this thing dies very quickly. So that's the Mega Cubes in a nutshell. I know that was a lot of detail and a little bit wonky for folks that aren't necessarily used to going into that level of depth, but that's why it works that way, and that's why we need you to be at your best when you're coming to these things. So if you haven't reached that point yet, keep working, keep pushing, keep upgrading that Vidar. Even if it's not a part of this event, you'll still get the benefits of getting more probes every time and your ability to refine more and get better results from it. But once this event rolls around again, you'll have a shot at these big things, and you can do more for the Alliance, because when you're looking at the Alliance leaderboards, and the solo leaderboards for that matter, you can look at the tooltips, and with the Alliance leaderboards, you'll see not only from spending the directives, the Mega Cube directives are much more important as far as completing the event goes, and destroying the Armada itself has a much higher return on investment. So spending them's okay, but that's just doing the spending part. You're not killing these things, which is 4,500 points the Alliance gets per person each time. So 6 people doing 4,500 points, that's 27,000 points we get, plus the initial rewards we get of 4,500 from the person who starts that. So it makes a really big difference on the Alliance leaderboard whether we start and die on it or we start and kill it. So that's very important to understand. A lot of it is about working as a team together and making sure that this works out for everybody. And a lot of our scores that we put towards this have been as a result of this. You can see that I haven't been super active in these, but I've got a very high score. And that's because I've been focusing on the really big fish. I've been hitting the epics, and I've been hitting the Mega Cubes. And that's just about it. A lot of the people who've been putting in more time, they've been focusing on a lot smaller targets, but they really haven't got a very good return on the investment from those smaller targets. The directives aren't getting them as far, and they just don't do as much. They just don't reward as well in points. So that's what you need to be aware of. Thank you for all the effort people put in during this Alliance event. We've been doing very well. 6th place is nothing to sneeze at, which is where we're at right now. Maybe subject change within the next few hours. We'll see. But that's really all you need to know about the Mega Cubes, the Vidar, and how everything works. If you have any questions, please ask in Discord. We'll try to address those types of things. But that's all I have for now. This is Captain Ando. Live long and prosper. Signing out.